Deadline to work out a deal with Iran to limit its nuclear program is now just weeks away, and the Obama administration continues to negotiate despite strong opposition from Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. If there is a deal, what role will Congress play? Joining us now, Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson, a member of the Foreign Relations Committee, and from Florida, Senator Bill Nelson, who sits on the Armed Services Committee. Gentlemen, let's start with something that the two of you may agree on. If the U.S. and its allies work out a deal with Iran, Senator Johnson, will Congress have to approve it?
Good morning, Chris. I certainly hope so, and that's certainly what the Corker-Menendez bill is going to lay out, and we'll hopefully mark that up in committee next week. The Iranian Parliament will get to say yes or no on this deal. I think the United States Congress should have that exact same input into the process.
Senator Nelson, you, of course, are a Democrat. This Corker-Menendez bill, which would mandate that Congress be given a right to vote up or down on any deal with Iran, the president has said he will veto it. Question, if he does veto it, if there is a deal and if he vetoes it, will you vote as a Democrat to override the president's veto? Will you vote against the president?
Well, first of all, what is the Corker-Menendez, of which I'm an original co-sponsor? It is to prevent, by voting, the lifting of congressional sanctions. That's not an up or down vote on the whole deal. It is a major part of the deal. And so your question, will I vote to override, depends on the context of the whole deal, which we don't know until March 24th, when the administration will announce if their negotiations are successful or not.
All right, let's talk, gentlemen, about a deal, because there are some general outlines, obviously not the details, but some general outlines that have come out. Let's put them up on the screen. A freeze on sensitive nuclear activity for at least 10 years, a cap on centrifuges and enriched uranium, and intrusive inspections. Senator Nelson, briefly, obviously the devil is in the details, but that outline that I just laid out there and what you've heard about it, could you accept a deal like that?
Well, again, we don't know what the final deal is, but the key part of what you mentioned, if that's true, is the intrusive and unannounced inspections. The only way that you're going to keep Iran, which you can't trust any more than a rattlesnake, the only way you're going to make sure that they are not developing a bomb is the intrusive and unexpected inspections. That's what's going to be key.
Let me ask you, Senator Johnson, about Prime Minister Netanyahu's statement in his powerful speech to Congress this week, in which he tried to link any possible deal to Iran's behavior. Here he is.
If the world powers are not prepared to insist that Iran change its behavior before a deal is signed, at the very least, they should insist that Iran change its behavior before a deal expires.
Senator Johnson, is that reasonable?
It really is, and that was an extraordinary speech. It was a courageous speech, because Prime Minister Netanyahu came to America to alert Congress and America to what he views as an existential threat to the state of Israel, and Iran is the primary sponsor, state sponsor of terrorism around the world. Its influence is growing in the region, and this deal, as it's being described with a sunset provision, doesn't stop nuclear proliferation. It will probably hasten it, as we're already hearing Saudi Arabia is met with Pakistan. They'll just purchase a nuclear weapon, and this region will become even more dangerous. So this is a bad deal. I agree with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he was just coming here to America to alert it, and he paid a political price for doing so, but it was a real courageous act of his.
Here was President Obama's response to the Netanyahu speech. Take a look.
What I can guarantee is that if it's a deal I've signed off on, I will be able to prove that it is the best way for us to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. And for us to pass up on that potential opportunity would be a grave mistake.
Senator Johnson, this sort of is where the rubber hits the road here. I understand that you just don't want any deal, but isn't there a price to be paid if these negotiations fall apart? And I know at this point you're very suspicious, as a lot of people are, about the deal the president's working out. But if you don't get a deal, and you can argue this isn't a perfect deal or far from it, Iran ramps up its nuclear program. We've said that we would take out that program. Are you prepared for the possibility of the U.S. going back to war in the Middle East?
You know, Chris, everybody's been saying that Iran cannot be allowed to get a nuclear weapon. I agree with that. This negotiation was lost at the start when this administration basically allowed Iran to continue to enrich uranium, contrary to every UN resolution for the last decade that says that Iran has to suspend the enrichment of uranium. And so, you know, this paves the way, as Prime Minister Netanyahu said, for Iran to basically weaponize its nuclear program. There is no peaceful nuclear program in Iran. There's no reason for them to enrich uranium other than for a weapon. So President Obama, in this instance, again, is just denying the reality situation. And that's what Prime Minister Netanyahu basically pointed out with real clarity. Here's who Iran is. They're evil.
Well, okay, but I just want to, so you're saying he's already lost the deal. So basically you're saying
he has.
Whatever he comes up with here, you think is a bad deal and the U.S. shouldn't make.
Well, listen, we'll see what deal it is, because I really don't know the details, but a sunset provision allowing maybe 6,500 centrifuges to continue to spin, that is not a deal that's acceptable.
So then what happens?
Well, then we're going to have to, what we should do is we should institute some severe sanctions, and that's what, of course, President Obama did, is he relaxed those sanctions. We do not want an economically strong Iran, as well as a strong state sponsor of terrorism around the world. Look at their influence expand in the region. This is getting very dangerous. President Obama is denying that reality.
And if Iran decides to ramp up its program because the negotiations have fallen apart, what should we do then?
We cannot allow them to have a nuclear weapon. If that means military action, that's what it'll end up taking. And if Israel believes it's threatened and it takes military action, the United States has got to back our strong ally.
Senator Nelson, you get the final word.
Well, thank you, Chris. I disagree with my colleague that he seems to know what the deal is. Excuse me. And I disagree with the Prime Minister that he would come and try to kill a negotiation while the very negotiation is going on in Geneva. I don't think that's right. And I don't think it's right also that he would come in front of the U.S. Congress as the representative of the American people 2 weeks before an election. That's not right. So let's get through all of this. Let's see what the negotiation produces.
Right.
Let's hope there's an alternative to war. But at this point, we don't know.
Senator Nelson, Senator Johnson, I want to thank you both. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we will stay on top of these negotiations.
Every day, Chris.